The PhD. For a lot of people, it's kind of like the Mount Everest of education. It's this symbol of ultimate expertise, but it's also wrapped up in a whole lot of mystery. So, what does that journey to the summit actually look like these days?
So what does it really take to earn one? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break it all down. We'll look at the two major paths you can take, see how the dissertation itself is getting a total rethink, and explore what the future might hold for this degree that's been around for centuries. All right, so the PhD has a pretty rich history. It all started back in 1800s Germany as this whole new way of thinking about research. It didn't take long for the idea to jump across the pond to the US and the UK, and since then, it's become the absolute gold standard for academic achievement. I mean, just look at the numbers. Over 50,000 are awarded every single year in the US alone.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting. While the end goal is the same, getting that doctoral degree, the road to get there can look wildly different depending on where you are. Let's compare the two big systems you'll find around the world, the American model and the European model.
The first thing you'll notice right off the bat is the time commitment. An American PhD is a bit of a marathon, usually 5 to 6 years, because those first couple of years are all about heavy-duty coursework and exams. The European model, it's more like a sprint, a focused 3 to 4 year path where you often dive straight into the research.
And that difference in length really comes down to the structure. In the US, you typically start with a bachelor's degree and enter a pretty broad program. You kind of shop around for a lab and a mentor for a couple years. But in Europe, it's really common to come in with a master's already and get recruited for a specific funded project. It's almost more like applying for a research job than applying to a school.
So, how do you pay for all this? Well, in the US, it can be a real puzzle. The money is a patchwork from different sources, and it's usually tied to you being a teaching or research assistant, which means your funding can actually change from one year to the next. The European model is often way more straightforward. You get a fixed scholarship for the whole program, sometimes even paid for directly by a company that's interested in your research.
The differences even go down to the philosophy of how you're evaluated. The US system is all about formative assessment. Think of it like a journey. You have a committee that guides you and checks in on your progress the whole way. The European model is much more summative. It's all about the destination. The main event is the final defense of your dissertation in front of an independent panel.
But here's the thing. Whichever path you take, American or European, it all leads to this one massive, monumental piece of work, the dissertation. But now, in the 21st century, the very idea of what a dissertation should even be is getting a serious rethink.
For like 100 years, this was the deal. The dissertation was your passport. It was the one giant scholarly book that proved you had the chops to be a true expert.
But our world is changing at lightning speed, and so is knowledge itself. So people are starting to ask a really important question. Does a format that was created in the 1800s still make sense for the needs of today?
And because everything's digital now, we can actually see who's using these things. The data on electronic dissertation downloads tells a fascinating story. The sciences and social sciences are completely dominating, making up almost 80% of all downloads. So it's not like they're obsolete, but their biggest audience is definitely in specific fields.
And get this, it's not just a digital book anymore, not even close. The modern dissertation is becoming this dynamic package. Students are including everything. The raw data, the code they used, even audio and video files. It makes the research so much more transparent and useful for everyone else.
This quote from the Council of Graduate Schools just nails it. It basically says, hey, it's kind of crazy to just assume that the old model is still the best one. It's a real call to action to imagine what the final product of a PhD could be.
So, where is all of this heading? Well, it's all building towards the future of the PhD. And the reality is, for most graduates, the future is happening outside the university walls.
Just chew on this number for a second. More than 60% of new science PhDs in the US will end up in careers outside of academic research. But for the longest time, the training has been almost entirely focused on creating the next generation of professors. That is a major disconnect.
So what do these other employers want? Of course they want the deep expertise, but what they're really crying out for are PhDs who have those professional skills, people who can work on a team, manage a project, and explain complex stuff to people who aren't experts. And those are skills that have to be taught on purpose.
And this is the really cool part. It's leading to some amazing innovation. Instead of that one giant book, universities are trying out all these new models, like a collection of published articles, a documentary film, a software project, or even work aimed at the general public.
Now, it's so important to remember, this isn't about saying the whole system is broken. As the National Research Council points out, the traditional PhD created a ton of incredible knowledge. The real goal here is to make the system more flexible, more responsive, so it actually lines up with the diverse careers that graduates are going to have.
And that leaves us with this huge question for the future. As knowledge itself becomes more collaborative, more digital, and more public, the highest degree we offer has to evolve right along with it. The conversation about what a PhD is and what it could be is one of the most important discussions happening in education today.